Hello and welcome back to the second half of section 2 and all of the psychoanalytic approaches. Today we're going to be talking about some Neo-Freudian theories, or the theories that come after Freud. Your learning targets for today, we're going to talk about those Neo-Freudians being Carl Jung, Alfred Adler, and Karen Horney, and their theories of personality and psychosocial development. Jung, Adler, and Horney, each separately. We'll explain Erikson's theory of personality development and how he expands on Freud's stage theory. And we'll describe how psychologists today evaluate and use the psychoanalytic approach. So Carl Jung is a pretty important guy. He is a colleague of Freud's and pretty close friend as well, but he later falls into disfavor when he starts to come up with his own ideas instead of following Freud's, and he starts to focus on dreams and symbols as the motivators behind behavior, as opposed to sex as the primary motivation behind behavior. And he begins his own approach to psychology called analytic theory. And analytic theory places a greater emphasis on the influence of shared symbols across all cultures and religion across all cultures, their influence on human behavior. So as Freud thought that we had an ego, a superego, and an id, Jung believes that people have a ego, which is their conscious, what they're thinking about, a personal unconscious mind where they store their own personal memories and repress memories there in their unconscious mind, and also a collective unconscious, which is a reservoir of human concepts that are shared and inherited by all people across all cultures. And this is very, very primitive stuff. And the components in this collective unconscious, these concepts, are very primitive, and they're called archetypes. And these archetypes are ideas and images of these the whole accumulated experience of human beings. And you inherited that, and it is in your collective unconscious. And although these images and these things remain unconscious, they appear in dreams. And so we'll go over some of the four most basic, or the four most major archetypes here in a second. But Jung believed that this consciousness that we have is characterized by four functions, which is thinking, feeling, intuition, and sensation. And we've been talking about those in class. And also, he said that a person must go through individuation. And individuation is becoming an individual separate from other human beings. And you do this by integrating your conscious and your unconscious elements. And it is necessary to develop a whole sense of self. And the self is what makes you different from other human beings. Here are Jung's four main archetypes, and the number one is the self, and this is the one that is the center of your personality. It's the unified consciousness and unconsciousness, and it's often symbolized by a circle. There's the shadow. The shadow is often the darker side of human nature, which embodies the chaos and the uncontrollable or unacceptable emotions that we have. Represented in dreams by devil figures or mysterious enemies or monsters. The anima or the animus are anima is the feminine qualities within a man's personality, and the animus is masculine qualities within a woman's personality. And the persona is your public self. It's what you want to show to the outside world. And he believed that we have two different selves, an ideal self and a true self, and that ideal self is what we want to show off to the world. Two other important Neo-Freudian theorists are Adler and Horney. And Alfred Adler, they come after Freud, and they once believed in Freud's ideas, but now they tweak them to their own. And Adler believes that parts of an individual's unconscious self works to convert natural feelings of inferiority into feelings of superiority. And these desires of the self-ideal are countered by social and ethical demands. And this conflict, if it's not resolved, can cause an inferiority complex where you feel that you are inferior and all of your feelings come out automatically as feeling inferior. And he also talks about and introduces the idea of sibling rivalry. He doesn't coin the term, but he does introduce it to describe jealousies among brothers and sisters. And he also says that this is important in personality development, that birth order. You know, if you're first, second, third in your family, that can also play into a person's personality development. Horney is kind of the woman champion against all of Freud's sexual underpinnings, and she agrees with Freudian principles, but she does reject the notion of the Oedipus complex, saying that the boy possessing the mother and being jealous of the father is just a result of anxiety. And she also talks about woman's jealousy of men's power and success, and she rejects that. She says that men could just as easily have womb envy instead of women having penis envy. Men have womb envy because they are jealous that they cannot have children, and they work hard and successful to try to overcome that. And she also believes a child's perceptions rather than the parent's intentions in a parent-child relationship play a major role in the adult personality development. So when parents treat a child with indifference or harshness, children can develop feelings called basic anxiety, and those can linger on into adulthood and affect a person's personality development. Finally, we get to Erikson. Erikson believes the social relationships that a person has are the most important factors in personality development. He expands Freud's idea of ego and later labels the stages of development, and he actually adds to them. There's 8 of Erikson's stages, and we'll go over them here in a second, and I'll show you how to make the chart. But each of Erikson's stages provides, it builds upon the successful completion of the previous stages, and mastering a stage is not necessarily required to move on to the next one. But if you do have challenges in each of these stages that are not complete, those can manifest themselves as problems during later stages. And so his first 4 stages are pretty close to Freud's. Here are his stages of psychosocial development, and I love this chart. I took it straight from Wikipedia. But it has the ages on the left, and then I would only focus on the ages, the psychosocial crisis, which is actually the name of the stage, and each name has a conflict. The significant relationship I would include in your charts, and if you want to help you remember it, there's the existential question and examples of the stages in which challenges that a person must go through. But 0 to 2 is basic trust versus mistrust, and this is the child overcoming feelings of abandonment and trusting the mother to feed. And 2 to 4 is autonomy versus shame and doubt, and this is, is it okay to express my feelings? Is it okay to be me, essentially? And this involves the parents. This is toilet training and learning to dress themselves. 4 to 5 is initiative versus guilt, and it involves the family. Is it okay for me to do, move, and act? And so you're learning to explore and use tools, make art during that time in your life. 5 to 12 is industry versus inferiority, and this involves your neighbors and your school. And basically, can I make it in the world of people and things? Are you going to make it? Can you go to school and learn to do sports, learn to be social? 13 to 19 is identity versus role confusion. We've already talked about Erikson's identity approach. And it's basically figuring out who you are and what you can be and developing your social relationships. 20 to 39 is love, and you're focusing on love, and intimacy versus isolation is the name of that. And the significant relationship is the person's friends and partners. And 40 to 64 is generativity versus stagnation. Hopefully you remember those words from development. Can you make your life count? Why are you here? You want to be remembered. You want to make stuff and make your life count. And the 65 through death is ego, integrity versus despair. And you basically come to grips with your reflection on life. And those are Erikson's 8 stages of psychosocial development. I probably won't get too specific with them on assessments in my class, but it is good to have a basic idea of what the stages entail. So, how do we evaluate the psychoanalytic approach? Well, Freud, what he contributes is that you can study human personality and behavior scientifically. And a lot of people thought that during the time that he was a psychologist that you could only focus on behavior. And now we can study the human personality scientifically. It does focus a lot of attention on childhood events, and it does help people realize that these sexual and aggressive urges that people have are common. They don't mean you're evil. They don't mean you're bad. They're common, but there's a difference in having them and acting upon them. But criticisms and drawbacks of the theory is it's too much emphasis on unconscious motives. We don't know quite what we're doing. You know, it's hard to study the unconscious empirically. It neglects the importance of social relationships besides Erikson's theory. It neglects the social relationships in a person's life, and basically it's all inside the individual. Methods for gathering evidence. Freud didn't really have a lot of scientific experiments that he did. He only took his evidence from the people who sought help from him, which were white middle-class individuals. So we can't really generalize this to the entire population. It'd be kind of hard to. And so those are criticisms of the psychoanalytic approach. Our learning target review, we discussed Jung's theories of archetypes and the collective unconscious. We talked about Adler's inferiority complex, and we described about Hornet's rejection of Freud's theories and how childhood experiences play a role in personality development. We discussed Erikson's theory of personality in psychosocial development, and we described how psychologists evaluate the psychoanalytic approach. Whew, that was a lot of information, so I hope that you got it all down in your learning targets, and be looking for an assessment here on this stuff soon, and I hope you have a good night. Goodbye.